Hello and welcome to the SEO office hours for February 2025. After January felt like it was 17 weeks long and 4 different seasons, February has gone by relatively quickly. Although we are now steaming through 2025, which feels like it's going very fast and scary. This month's office hours, we're going to be discussing a few questions which are leftovers from live questions asked during January's office hours, which is also available on playback on LinkedIn as well as on the SALT YouTube channel. And we've got some fresh questions which we're going to try and answer through that have come through on Reddit DM, Slack, TwitX DM, anything like that. Joining me this month, Peter again, will be answering your questions, as well as one of SALT's technical SEO leads. I think I got that right, Mr. Daniel.
Hey.
As you can see, everyone is saving all the words for answering these questions, which was not so happen. So the first question was quite AI heavy this week because, I mean, there may or may not be something happening with AI in the world. We don't know. But one of the first questions, which is legacy from last month's SEO office hours, is AI copy bad for SEO? And I know this is a question that has been asked quite a lot, especially since the early days of ChatGPT 3 and 3.5 becoming, I don't know what's over there, but I'm just pointing that way. Since that kind of came about a mass content generation, but really, is it bad? Does Google care, essentially? Peter, do you want to pick this one up first?
Yeah, I'd say I've seen AI copy work. I've seen it get ingested by Google, and I've seen it served out by Google in the SERPs. That's changed a little bit in the past few months. I think blindly relying upon AI copy is largely going to be a bit of a foolish enterprise. Even if it may work initially for a period of time, it's only really a matter of time before it's not. And I think we are already getting into that phase where it's not working from pure AI point of view. It's not that the search engines can detect it. It's more a case of it's not really of the quality that searchers use and respond to. There are elements of luck to it, but AI in its pure AI copy in pure form, no. Translation, possibly, if it's well monitored and well maintained. But again, what worked 6 months ago may not work now. I think really, yeah, AI is a good base to do your groundwork on, but to actually produce copy with it and not edit it, not amend it, not proof it, not check it, no, that's not really going to be a wise idea and not going to pay off from an SEO perspective. It might look like it's going to short term, but yeah, inevitably it's only going to hurt you, I think.
I think what's interesting is just like you said, that evolution of how we've come on. I mean, I remember when we first got access to like ChatGPT 3, I think was the first mainly public accessible model, and I spun up a couple of random landing pages, and in like 2 days I had featured snippets on just purely unedited, mangled, horrific, low quality content. And I think potentially that whole thankfully we're losing the ability to do that now is just because of how burnt the internet has been by the just tsunami of AI generated rubbish that has gone to it. Before we go into the guidelines, Daniel, what are your thoughts around this?
I was going to say, I don't think with the whole start of the question, AI copy being bad for SEO, I don't think AI generated copy is inherently bad. But I think the landscape has really changed from, as you said, when it was first released compared to now. We have seen many websites that have been spun up, which has been entirely generated by AI, ChatGPT or other LLMs that were ranking well, and then all of a sudden seeing a crash where we've seen Google really hammer down and penalize on this content. AI generated copy that could be, or rather has some process of editing in there, or a heavy process of editing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But pure AI copy, but it's not being touched at all. It's just being slapped on copy and paste, no thought behind it at all. You're not really going to go anywhere with it for SEO. It's not going to reach that ceiling to actually be put on the ranking pages either.
I think what's interesting about it is at the end of January this year, Google have updated their search quality evaluator guidelines. They actually now mention AI. I think it's 20, it's like 20 or 21 times now throughout the entire document, and generative AI is about 14 or 15 times. From going through the changes and spending about a week and reading through most of it, it feels like Google themselves are trying to juggle this pro AI stance in the sense that they want AI is a good thing and they want businesses to use it to subscribe to Workspace. Basically, it's how they're going to make the next few billions over the next few years to make shareholders happy. But then they also need to curb the abuse of AI generation of things just because it's flooding the internet and adding no value. The interesting things there, especially around the editing side, is we're now with the quality rate of things like highly meets, lowest meets, all the rest of it, the same that's been around since like the past 9 years. Google now automatically say the lowest rating applies if all or most of the main content on the page, including text, images, audio, videos, etc., is copied, paraphrased, embedded, auto or AI generated, or reposted from other sources with little to no effort. So that goes to your speak of, yeah, if it's just AI churn thrown out there, it's done. The thing which then is more interesting around that, in my opinion, as well, is that websites who have that disclaimer, and this is something that's probably legacy from affiliate days, where all affiliate sites had we make money from some links on this website. Google now say if a website terms of use state that some articles are generated by artificial intelligence, and interestingly, or may have errors or be out of date, there was website owners shirking accountability for accuracy because it's blamed on AI, but there is no indication as to which pages or parts of articles this statement applies. All information will be classed as not trustworthy and will have the lowest E. So it's a really weird middle ground. I feel like trying to use it, but don't use it to scale. So it's then like, well, why use it if I have to write it anyway? So it's a fun one. So I think from that first question, we can probably take a very conclusive point of this and say it depends.
The standard SEO answer.
Yeah, it's almost like it can still work, and I think it's very much niche dependent. It's very much you're not trying to outrun every other article on the internet. You're just trying to outrun whatever the next fastest is in your vertical niche or whoever's covering it, and it's one factor of many in whatever the quality soup is that does it. It's not just a monochromatic box tick. So that kind of leads us on to the next question, which is also a legacy from the last office hours as well in January. And that is, can AI content actually rank on Google? Peter, I know you've got a lot more experience with this, especially in the early days. So do you want to pick this one?
Yeah, I have seen AI content rank. We've produced AI content that ranked with minor technical checking to make sure there were no spurious links or odd bits of prompt left over and stuff like that. So I have seen AI generated content rank. I've also seen handwritten content and AI content that was then translated using AI. Seen that rank as well. Now, that's to say, yes, I've seen it rank, but I've also seen it subsequently not rank afterwards. It's slightly different aspect on the translation side of things. That content does appear to still rank quite well, even though English AI generated content seems to get a hit quicker. So maybe there's an element of catch up going on. Would I build a site largely using AI content and expect it to rank now? No, I don't think I would. Again, not without significant manual intervention, human intervention, and it's as much as there are things out there sort of like that suggesting you can humanize your AI output by using other AIs with humanization prompts. It's kind of, really, are we going to try going down that road? It's kind of, but that said, the reality of Google wanting everything to not be AI generated, to have human input, not produce things at scale, really does kind of produce a bit of a paradox. It's almost as though we've used technology to shoot ourselves in the foot over the years, and now, subsequently going to pay the price. So yeah, I'm sure we are going to see more AI content generated. That does rank. There will always be exceptions to the rule. It's just the nature of the business. It's always been the case. Would I do it myself? No, I don't. Even if it ranked, I would not expect it to stay there. And you're always going to be playing a catch-up game. You might be able to prop it up for a bit longer with a few links and things like that. But again, sooner or later, it's going to get figured out, and it will get dropped. Simple as that.
I was going to say, isn't that similar to what the AI heist, for want of a better word, was, where they spun up a domain, all AI content? And I mean, my thought processes on that originally were around how Google handles things like the quality thresholds, in that it was new, it was a high amount of content, it was fresh, and then over time, it probably necessarily didn't have the same user signals or the positive signals, or the domain didn't pick up the traction to warrant the resources being allowed to it, and time decay happened, it lost the freshness and fell out of ranking. And that was my viewpoint on that. And yeah, it has been weird, the evolution of how some AI content has ranked and then hasn't. I mean, the bank rate examples were really interested early on. If you both can remember those, where they were using AI to write the content and then using editors to edit and verify it. And they predominantly stopped just because of the backlash they were getting from the industry at the time and the negative fears of it.
Yeah, I mean, that said, though, that various news publications have used large language models to assemble content. So it's not AI as such. They're looking for specific things to generate small news reports. And that's still going on. That kind of content still ranks. It suggests that there is still a future for programmatically generated content, no matter, with very loose connotations as to how you define that, whether it's pure AI and an AI bot being allowed to go and do stuff itself, or whether it's something you're physically configuring to create content that's always going to be consistent. Yeah, you really got to wonder, is that I understand the backlash that went on at the time, and I don't know that it was necessarily pure AI that they were using anyway. It was a set of rules created to generate, stock XYZ went up, ABC and down, and so on and so forth. It really wasn't pure AI in that context. And I think that's one of the things that Google and the other search engines come to that, and SEOs as a whole have failed to kind of really split the difference between, or define the differences between AI generated content, what LLMs do, machine assembled content with rules and systems, using things like Liquid and stuff like that. And again, or having done most of those things over the years, the content that comes as a result of them is being treated differently now than it was a few years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So yeah.
Well, what's interesting is I've actually just gone on the Bankrate, and they still actually have their AI policy, which is lovely titled "How Bankrate is Using Artificial Intelligence and Automation to Enhance Our Editorial Content." And they give 3 examples. One, we use AI to organize and contextualize large amounts of data. We will use AI to optimize portions of our workflow, and we will use AI to assist in creating new articles or refreshing existing ones. And they do go on to say that writers and editors are able to use AI tooling to assist with drafting content, allowing them to spend more time researching. This specific type of automation is only used in a small minority of our overall content production. And then a writer and editor will be involved in the production process from start to finish, driving the process throughout. Each article's fact checked, yada yada. So it's kind of like, so when it says drafting's got multiple flavors. So it could either be an initial kind of structure, or it could be the whole thing. Drafting is very vague in my instance, but I do still find it interesting that because of the industry backlash and all the hoo-ha of, someone's using AI content at the time, that kind of I think that'd have been a really interesting experiment to have carried on to see how well they performed over the last couple of years if it wasn't for market backlash. It kind of restricted the amount they were doing, really.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think I was going to say, sorry as well. I think just going back to the original question on can AI on content rank well, and just to piggyback off of what yourself, Peter, was saying at the start, I think that I think this is similar to the previous question as well on that it was working at the start, like when ChatGPT was like really exploding in popularity. But as you said, Dan, with like for certain niches, like very obscure niches, it probably still could work quite well. But again, when you have you'll have user backlash and as well market backlash, and also other things like the rise of what we've seen EAT being a lot more, I guess, important now in some respects in content in certain industries, like probably not going to be ranking as well compared to like, actual human written content.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, I think the post went away when I moved website. I didn't take it over, but I did a little study back in that January. I think it was 2023 when AI started really kicking off. I had someone on. Well, I paid a professional tarot reader, to write an article explaining the meanings of a death card. I then had AI or ChatGPT at the time to write the same article, and I put them both in PDFs, put them out on LinkedIn, and had people just basically tell me, right, which one's AI and why. And 60% of the people thought the human written one was AI, and only 40% of people thought the AI was AI. Now, obviously, that was when it was very early on. Now, I think most people have a pretty good gut feeling when they're reading something, it's AI or not, because for certain cues, for certain phrase structures, it very much feels like when you used to get the really cheap 500-word articles about 10, 15 years ago off like place like Fiverr and Mechanical Turks and things like that. It's got that same tell, but the understanding has evolved over time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of moving on to the third question, and moving away from AI, to something a bit more technical and a bit e-commerce. So a fun one, something that I know Daniel and I have worked a lot on and have grown to love and hate in equal measure. And that's just around migrations in the Salesforce Commerce Cloud. So the question I had sent by Slack is, how can we get around redirect limits moving to Salesforce Commerce Cloud? Mr. Daniel, would you like to pick this one up?
Yeah, of course. So as we know, Salesforce Commerce Cloud does have a redirect limit of up to 25,000 redirects, which when you are a large e-commerce website, that is, quite frankly, just not enough. Take into account legacy backlinks, the many, many different products and categories and blog posts that you could have, and so on. What we usually do, which I think is now becoming a bit more of a standard practice across websites, is using CDNs for redirect implementation. So most of the time, websites will be using things like Cloudflare, Imperva, Amazon CloudFront, and so on for their CDNs. And all of these CDNs will have functionality for redirect implementation. So, depending on both the CDN itself and how many redirects that you might want to upload, there might be some limitations on top of that as well. If you're using Cloudflare or CloudFront, you may see, well, that doesn't really have like a upper limit on the redirects that you can upload. So you can use that as your front line for storing redirects. Obviously, that'll have to come with its own like documentation as well, but usually it's just much easier for using Cloudflare. Same with CloudFront as well, sorry. However, when you have CDNs like Imperva, I know Imperva also have their own limit on redirects, so which is 20,000. So combined between, say, if you have a Salesforce Commerce Cloud website, which is using Imperva, and you want to use both, you do have a redirect upper limit of 45,000 redirects. So if you have a website that requires more than 45,000 redirect rules, you will have to look into other methods. If the redirects are an absolute essential, there could be the case of, this comes with its own business case, but it would have to, the proposition of switching CDNs to something like Cloudflare, CloudFront can be used as a way to reach those redirect limits. Alternatively, you may have to have, which is not ideal, because it gets a bit messy, but you may have to use perhaps more than 2 or 3 redirect implementations. I know some websites which have to have redirects through a CDN and then Salesforce Cloudflare, and then on the origin server as well, and then another server, and it just gets really messy, and then the redirects start clashing against each other, and then it's a whole other mess. But usually, to get around the limit on Salesforce Commerce Cloud, usually your best bet is just going for a CDN like Cloudflare or CloudFront.
I think it's just really nice. Every now and again, we can actually have a technical question, which is just this is how you do it, or you don't. And that is a very rare thing. So that's why I'll take a second to appreciate our ability to actually interact. I think one of the key things in that as well is sometimes moving CDN is quite a considerable thing. It's not just an SEO consideration, it's an infra consideration. It might be tied into different elements, but generally speaking, it is the only way around it, especially if you have very large product catalogs. And if you're unable to move CDN, or for some reason you need to rebuild that business case internally to be able to use the CDN and the edge functionality to do those rules, it's mainly building the business case, and you can do that by pointing to revenue of products, visibility of products, rankings, basically just put metrics to it. I say revenue because everybody in a business understands a number with a dollar sign or a pound sign in front of it. Not many people in a business will necessarily understand if we start talking in terms of rankings or, I know, needs for touch points or things like that, because that's very SEO language, which, yeah, most people will have a gist of, but they really understand something with a numerical financial value. So the last question that I just want to cover off, going back to this, and this is kind of combining both the AI and technical, which I had asked on Slack as well. And this is just a spectacle, because I've done some looking into this and there's nothing definitive on this, but it's interesting to actually understand if Google's like AI crawlers, how Google's crawling the website from an AIOV perspective or a Gemini perspective or something like that. Will that affect crawl budget in the sense that we have for organic, or do you think that's going to be a separate kind of pot, if you like? Who wants to lead with that?
Yeah, I'll have a go. In the past, when Google has been asked about crawl budget, if I recall correctly, and I could be wrong, but if I recall correctly, most of the time the answer has been, if it's a Google bot crawling, then yes, it counts towards crawl budget. So I'm inclined to think that, or I'd be inclined to think that, yes, it probably does affect crawl budget. And until we are definitively told otherwise, I would plump with that assumption. Does it seem fair? Well, no, not really, because their AI crawlers are crawling to extract information from websites to repurpose it on the SERP. So is it fair that sites pay the price in the form of the crawl budget in the first place? That's another matter and a difficult question. But yeah, I'd be inclined to assume it does count until we're told otherwise.
So we're dangerously close there to having the conversation of, is Google fair? And I think that is a rabbit hole which I don't feel mentally able to do on a Friday afternoon. But no, I from my own memory, anecdotally, I think that is what the advice was. I think it was Mr. Mueller who said that on one of the Google office hours quite a while ago. The interesting, I think, with that is then, so if it is all going to come out the same pot, and we assume that the AI crawlers are, and whether or not it's fair or whatever, it's Google, how we actually influence crawl budget and how we actually influence crawl demand. And I even wrote articles back in the day. We used to kind of do the equation of number of URLs on your site, number of times crawled, work it out, and kind of do a ratio. That's quite a nice layman way of doing it because we don't really have insights into it. But just for the completeness, I guess, of his answer, Google typically has three main factors in determining the crawl budget: the perceived inventory, so how big it believes the website is, how well it knows it. So then technically, how well are we linking to URLs, how well are our sitemap structured, all that kind of jazz. The popularity is actually how well are we doing anyway in terms of just performance, and how well do people know URLs, how many times are visiting it. And that's kind of head meets tail, because in order to be popular and get popularity metrics, you need to be served quite highly and be popular. So it's kind of like like the big get bigger kind of scenario. But there's other ways to build those signals, especially things through Chrome, if a lot of the findings are to believe, and also staleness for freshness. So I'm probably saying from a classic SEO perspective, and just doing marketing and just doing branding as ways to actually do things in this instance to improve that. But yeah, I think from the old memory is that it comes from the same pot.
Yeah, I think like there's looking at Google's documentation on its crawlers. Unfortunately, it doesn't say for certain with Google Extended, which is the bot it uses for essentially Gemini. The only sort of like relations and mention of Google search it has when within its Google Extended section is that Google Extended does not impact a site's inclusion or ranking in Google search. And that will probably be the case for a long time. However, as we have seen AI overviews becoming increasingly more common on Google search, and the fact that these are Gemini generated, that might change in the future as well, and we could then see Google Extended perhaps in the future even be included on, say, crawl stats page on Google Search Console. And how does that relate to how's that syncing with Googlebot and then Googlebot Mobile as well?
So again, there's probably a second question in a row. We're getting dangerously close to actually being able to not say it depends on stuff. I did say that's probably going to be our last question, but we have had one asked from Ishak, who was watching live. And I know what my immediate answer to this is, but I'm just going to open it for both of you to answer it first. And Ishak has asked, is there a need to create an LLMs.txt file separately, presumably for better LLM discovery? PC, you kind of narrowed your eyes at the LLM text file.
Yeah, that's not something I'm that familiar with, if I'm honest.
So, for context, the LLMs.txt file is a proposed web document, a proposed thing to coexist with current web core infrastructure. It's a markdown document which is both readable by humans and LLMs, but uses it's formatted in a way allowing fixed processing methods. So that's like how parsers and regex would work, or inferred how tokenization would work on text and content on a page. So it's almost like a sitemap, or probably not a sitemap, that's not the right word, but it's something for LLMs to be able to understand what is on the site, create sections, mark examples. There's a large number of websites adopting it randomly, but there isn't actually any, or there haven't been any to my knowledge, at least, any of the AI LLMs actually coming out and saying, like, yes, we support this, or we use this, or how well it influences it.
Mm.
I'm going to say at the moment, with when we see LLMs or rather LLM products like GPT Search and Gemini, they are pushing forward with giving direct references and links to web pages at the moment. So it does, and obviously, as we've seen with LLM crawlers, like ChatGPT's crawler, that will just crawl absolutely anything and everything, and complete disregard robots.txt. So it's one of those where it already seems like they actually prefer web pages at the moment. Maybe in the future, as the crawl develops, and if there are any, say, developments on how these LLMs can crawl websites, this might be required in the future. But as of now, just because there's no specific, or none of the, as you said, Dan, none of these companies have come out and said that they support this, might not be worth just doing it as of right now. But perhaps in the future, when we do see potentially this becomes supported even more, and you want to specifically target LLMs, then that could be something worth looking at.
I think one of the big issues at the moment is like, if you start Googling who supports LLMs, because it's such a new concept and there isn't enough data around it, and it is just that proposal, Google actually starts to bring back feature snippets in AI reviews actually specifically talking about like, for example, it actually I've just done the AI review says these LLMs support the LLMs.txt. At the top is Anthropic, which is ChatGPT. No, not ChatGPT. Is ChatGPT? Is it Claude? Or Plexi? Oh god, it's all merged into one. It's Claude. Anthropic's Claude.
Yeah. Claude.
Oh, my brain just completely had every brain cell hitting one at once at the moment, which was only a handful of them to begin with. I can't afford to lose anymore. But they support it in the sense that they have an LLMs.txt file. It doesn't actually mean they, as through Claude or anything else, like actually support it and automatically read it. If you because in the same list it also lists Cloudflare apparently as an LLM has it, but it just means these websites actually have adopted it. It doesn't mean the LLMs support it. I agree in the sense that it doesn't make sense for LLMs to now start just immediately looking at this and going, oh, somebody has very kindly told me what to look for on their website. And it also, to me, logically doesn't feel like something an LLM would necessarily want to follow, because, I mean, Andre Carthy, who was at OpenAI, who's done the big 4-hour video talking about Hugging Face's spine web and how LLMs like ChatGPT work, they invest a lot of resource and time into blacklisting certain URLs from being included in the training data sets. They spend a lot of time in stripping web pages of like JSON, of anything other than just the text itself. And then they seem to want that raw training set. It kind of feels counterintuitive that they then rely on, rather than kind of doing the research themselves, just relying on the good honesty of people on the internet and the honesty of SEOs and site owners to tell them exactly what their pages are around. So then it kind of feels a bit meta keywordsy all over again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your thoughts are, Peter, on that.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, just the logic of it all. We have web pages which have information on them that is used by search engines to go and find them, and obviously LLMs are crawling, scraping, extracting from them. We also have structured data and markup, where we do tell machines what the page is about, how it relates to different things, and all the rest of it. But oh no, we've got to come up with yet another way of doing this. Again, relying upon the human input to state what a page is about. It's kind of like, of course, it's going to get abused anyway. Yeah, it kind of like, it seems like it's a solution for a problem that that we already know exists and we're already well aware of it, but also, and that it can be abused as well. And yet we're trying to come up with yet another solution that does pretty much the same thing, but just writes it all out in a different way. I struggle to see why the industry's going down that road. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to say I have the solution here, because I don't, but I don't think it's that, if I'm honest.
So going down the rabbit hole slightly further, I do believe Anthropic does read and utilize LLMs.txt files.
Okay.
So that's obviously Claude, but I think this then also goes back to I don't think all LLMs are going to support this. Even if some do, some won't. It will turn into one of those, like the HTML language tag, for example. Like Bing roughly supports it, no one else does, and most people just have a default ENUS anyway, because it's just what it comes out of the box as standard. But just looking at it, so so Claude, that uses training data. They only use their own training data, and they only include URLs in the training set. So that's Anthropic sorted. Similar ones to that are going to be like your Llamas and Hugging Chat, which is your Find website, which is the one which Andre Carthay goes into. So if they're going to, so in theory, they're three very similar LLMs who currently source their data in a very similar way. And we can infer based on how apparently OpenAI and Hugging Chat do their text filtering and everything else, they do it in the same way. I would probably look more at the LLM's text files being more of a site discovery or URL discovery than actually we will retain that URL is about this kind of element to it. Because then if you look at like your Perplexity, Google's AI overviews, Gemini, Bing Generative Search, Ernie, which is Baidu's, they use search data plus other sources going in. And then you've got your likes of Grok, Meta, Hyperclover, who predominantly use their own individual platforms' datas. So I kind of guess it's one of these, if we are going to, if there's no mass adoption of this, because I don't see Bing or Google wanting to mass adopt something like this. I don't see Meta doing that. Don't see Hyperclover, don't see Grok. So it's going to be a handful of LLMs which are potentially going to adopt this. But I also don't see ChatGPT needing to either, just because of the user base they've got, the dominance they have, and access to data they have already. So if this is going to be a solution and some are going to adopt it, we need to, in my opinion, put the right rings around it, in that this isn't the silver bullet for all LLMs. It might just be the silver bullet for Claude. And if you're getting a lot of referral traffic from Claude because your target audience has moved to Claude, it's using Anthropic services, great. But if it's only minimal, the expectation needs to be tapered and to what the reward potential could be. Cool. So I think we have had one other question just asked as well by Ishak, which I think will be our final one, and then we can wrap off on, which I think is relatively quite straightforward for us to answer, because it just goes back to plain technical, and that's, I believe, it's how to actually manage AI crawlers through robots.txt file.
Well, simply put, most of the AI crawlers will have their user agent identifiable. And then you can, as with a regular search engine crawler, you should just be able to disallow them. However, given that, we have seen instances of these AI crawlers completely disregarding robots.txt, in which fact, I think it's ChatGPT, which is quite notorious for, just completely ignoring robots.txt. So if you're looking at managing crawling for AI crawlers, more specifically, if you want to limit the crawling of AI crawlers, you may have to do some basically IP, not IP, but user agent firewalling, essentially, either with your WAF, CDN, or whichever preferred method that you want to use. But yeah, I'd say, treat it the same as you would for a regular web crawler, but probably don't expect the same output through robots.txt, that is, at least.
Yeah, I literally gave an example of this at Tech SEO North last night. We found in a lot of data that Ali Reza pulled that it was hitting the GP, so general product subfolder, and citing that of Amazon. Now, if you go to any URL of a GP subfolder, all this is in Robots.txt file, by the way, it's all, like, none of it's hidden. It will 403 for you in the browser, but for ChatGPT, it redirects ChatGPT to the general help center page away from a general product folder. So they're aware that ChatGPT is ignoring Robots.txt rules and putting in almost like an extra safety net of just bugger off and go to this part of the site if you're this user agent as well, as opposed to just letting them ping it. You hope that they'll stop. But it's still interesting they're citing it, which is quite interesting. But yeah, completely agree with you here, Daniel. If you want to block it completely, set up server rules, because the principles of the internet haven't changed. And if you block the request and provide a different response, they can't get around that. It's a locked door, essentially.
Yeah, I don't think they'll want to invest enough to like try and get around any kind of like WAF or CDN rules, and that'd be very, very hard to do anyway.
I think it was very, unless you're a Wikipedia level of information, I don't think any of the LLMs will even register that you're blocking them. Okay.
Yeah.
People want to invest in it. It's like, oh, random node 3207 in sector Z has blocked us again. Fine.
Whatever. On to the next one.
Yeah, very much. So that brings us to a close for February's SEO office hours. We will be running another one towards the end of March. Potentially might pop another little one in between as well, depending on how schedules line up. Any questions we've not been able to answer on this one, we will do our best to answer in a follow-up one in March. If you have enjoyed this and you're watching the video on YouTube, please do consider dropping a like and subscribe to the channel. It does mean a lot. And if you're watching this live playback on LinkedIn, again, please do drop questions in the chat, because I get notifications of all the previous events as well, and we will just collate the questions up and try to go with one future office hours. So thank you very much for watching us live. Thank you for watching us on playback. Thank you very much for watching.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.